Good morning and welcome back to the France Made Simple podcast, the one where I talk nonchalantly about life in France and reveal everything I know and talk airily about lots of stuff that I know very little about as well, in the hope that it might be useful to somebody listening somewhere. Who knows? Anyway, today we are talking about rubbish and in particular going to the dump in France and going to the dump, not for a dump, please note, and how that actually works, the logistics, what you can and can't do, and anything else that might be useful when it comes to getting rid of your rubbish in France. Now, obviously, most people that end up in France have to go to the dump at one point or another in their lives here, and very often it's to do with clearing stuff out of properties or general property renovation. So pretty much like everybody else in France, when we first moved to France, we had an older property and we had a huge amount of stuff to dispose of. Now, we went to the local mairie, asked about the opening hours at the local dump, or déchetterie, as it's known in French. And having been informed that it was open all the time, we set off with a trailer load of rubbish, or déchets. It was open, literally. There was no fencing or official signage, just piles of rubbish tipped randomly on the ground. And judging from the sort of smouldering fires dotted around the place, the policy was to burn in situ. It was basically apocalyptic, and I can still remember how shocked we were. We had a wander round, and having told the children to stay away from any burning fires or flames or hot embers, we did manage to recover a large quantity of terracotta pots and a perfectly okay frying pan. Now, that was 22 years ago. Thankfully, things have changed. And whilst recycling in France, and certainly in some regions, is perhaps still not quite as advanced as in some other European countries, there's been great effort made over the last few years to reduce the amount of household waste. And apparently, average household waste in France is around 529 kilos per person per year. Although this figure excludes what they refer to as cravates and déblais, which is debris and rubble. Cravat is Gravats, and this is an important word to remember if you're renovating property in France, because you will end up taking quite a lot of cravat to the local déchetterie. Now, around half this figure consists of normal household waste, although obviously these figures are changing all the time as people get better at recycling and upcycling and repairing and not just chucking everything into landfill. And over a third of it is currently recyclable, as it consists of recyclable materials and green waste. And another little statistic for you here, because we know the French love statistics. In 1996, there were only 1,438 déchetteries open in France, but by 2021, this number had increased to nearly 5,000, which is a 60 something, can't do the maths. Let's go with well over 60% increase since 2001. So big increase in the last 20 years. And the quantity of items being dumped has also increased exponentially, with an increase of around 143% over the 20-year period. Now, the majority of these items include what is known as encombrants, like encumbrances in French. And this is mainly furniture, household appliances, and the other like. Also greenery, which is called déchets verts, debris, rubble, and recyclable stuff such as packaging materials, emballage, and wood, obviously le bois. So obviously we all need to reduce as much as possible the amount and quantity of stuff that we take to the dump, but there will be stuff that you cannot recycle, reuse, and just needs to go there. Excuse me. So, how do you go about finding and using a déchetterie if you need to dispose of this kind of stuff? Now, obviously, this is France, an official French government environmental website, which I will pop the link into the show notes. And it does contain lots of useful info about rubbish disposal, including a where to find your local recycling point or déchetterie. And there's also a very useful simulator, which is a kind of what to do with my X, Y, and Z, which clearly explains all the possible options for different items before you take them to the tip, which is quite rightly considered very much a last resort. However, although the déchetteries are listed, there isn't a quick way currently to check opening hours and access, or I haven't found one. So, having found your nearest tip, you're going to need to go online and look for opening times, etc., or ask at your local Murray or a neighbour if they're close to hand and reliable in terms of their information providing facilities. Capacity, that's the word, not facilities for people. Sorry, I do need more coffee. It's first thing in the morning. Anyway, these days, almost all dumps or tips or déchetteries have either their own website listing the contact details and the types of rubbish accepted, because they don't all accept everything. And the things that they do and don't are the déchetteries that don't have a website are almost always included in the commune or departmental websites. But as I've said, they don't accept everything, so do always check what they will and won't take. And it's also a good idea before you load up your trailer or the back of your Renault Megane and with your building rubble, check if they will accept large quantities of that, and also check if there's adequate access for trailers or larger vehicles. Now, different conditions usually apply to professionals, and these people are often required to pay or show an access card. And this also includes micro-entrepreneurs who are working as handymen. This can come back to bite you if, for example, you are a private individual who is renovating somewhere, has a lot of stuff to get rid of, but drives a white van, and you come across as looking like a professional. You will then need to explain that you are in fact a private individual or particulier. Now, some local déchetteries also require local residents to use an access card. This is generally provided free of charge to residents in the commune. Our local déchetterie does have a card. You are meant to show it. I've never been asked to show it, but I do keep it in the car just in case one day the barrier is closed and somebody asks me, where do I come from? Have I got the right to use that dump? And where's my card? Now, whilst most déchetteries will accept household appliances, things like used oil, tyres, wood, garden waste, and cardboard, they do almost always vary when it comes to everything else. Now, for example, my local tip doesn't accept used paint pots or varnish, but they do accept solvents. I know there's not a huge amount of logic going on here, or maybe there is, and I just don't understand it. My local one, also requires cardboard boxes to be folded, whereas the other local dump, which is a fairly similar distance, still in my commune, has no such requirement, happily takes paint and varnish, and nobody's ever asked me to fold my cardboard boxes. So it's a kind of case of getting to know your local déchetterie and the person running it, and then picking your site accordingly depending on what you want to get rid of. There are also some hazardous items that all déchetteries will refuse, asbestos being one good example. In this case, you are going to need to contact a specialist waste removal company, I'm afraid to say. Now, because of these different policies, plus the fact that you have to put it in the car and go there, we do try these days to get rid of as much stuff as possible in recycling points, which tend to be closer, rather than taking stuff to the tip and finding it won't accept them or it's shut or whatever. Now, almost all large supermarkets, DIY shops, and even garden centres and places like Decathlon now have recycling bins, and these will accept items such as electrical cables, batteries, bulbs, printer cartridges, even watches. And there are also numerous recyclery and brocante solidaire centres springing up. Now, these all vary slightly in what they do and what they will and won't take, but the general principle is that they accept items which can then be repaired and sold on or upcycled into something else. So if, for example, you've got a broken watch or something like that, your brocante solidaire may well be the place to take that. Now, we've also always made sure that we have a good relationship with the man who runs the tip, the responsable, at our local one. We always make sure to shake hands, say bonjour, merci, au revoir, and generally stick to good tip etiquette. And if you cultivate your relationship like this, it means that if you do need to drop off large quantities of heavy stuff, the people running the site are far more inclined to give you a hand. They are also more likely to let you retrieve stuff from the containers, which are known as les bins. In theory, this is strictly forbidden. In reality, it often happens, and there are often things which are worth salvaging, like my terracotta plant pots at the start of this episode and the frying pan. And if the workers at the tip on the site know you and they know you're not an idiot, they'll potentially turn a blind eye or even give you a hand to get stuff out. I've even had people climb in and pass me stuff up. So, what is good déchetterie etiquette and how should you behave? So, first of all, as I've just said, always treat the workers with respect. Just because they work with rubbish doesn't mean they're rubbish. Treat other users with respect too. Now, by this I mean if you've got a large quantity of stuff to sort out and dispose of, and you know it's going to take a while, and there's somebody in front of you with a tiny trailer or an elderly person, let them go first. If you see people struggling with heavy items, especially older people, stop and offer to give them a hand. Now, I would say that déchetterie etiquette also includes things such as driving in and parking considerately. If you block the access and people have to wait to get in or out, you're not going to be popular. The same goes for parking badly, blocking easy access to the containers. So, if you're dropping off building rubble or anything else messy that's likely to drop on the floor on the way from your car or trailer to the skips, take a broom and sweep up your mess. Be considerate. These kind of things are hugely appreciated by the staff at the déchetterie because otherwise they have to spend a lot of their time cleaning up after the people who use it. Make sure you know what goes where and stick to the instructions. If you're unsure or something isn't clear, ask. For example, chucking old floor joists into the cravat container, it may seem logical to you on the grounds that it's all renovation debris, but if the person in charge has to then get in, fish it out and put it in the wood container, you're adding to their workload. So be polite, act considerately, and whilst I wouldn't say that a trip to the déchetterie can be a day out, it can be a pleasant experience rather than a sort of chore where you think, oh God, I've got to go to the déchetterie and that man's going to have a go at me again and shout at me for where I've parked and tell me I've put the stuff into the wrong container. Approach it positively, like everything about life in France, and it will go a lot better. And there's always a huge feeling of satisfaction when you drive away having successfully got rid of a load of old rubbish from your property or outbuildings. And then you know that you can crack on with the next stage of the renovation. Don't forget that if you're planning to drop off items at a small local tip, if you're loading a trailer full of rubble or something similar, always phone ahead and double check they're open, because there's nothing worse than getting there when you've loaded it all up. You've got bleeding hands because you forgot to put your gloves in when you're and you're ready to unload, and you get there and you find there's a handwritten note on the gate announcing an une fermeture exceptionnelle, a sort of unexplained closing, which is something the French love to do. The number of times I've driven to a particular shop, business, place, destination for something specific and found a note on the door like that. If you are going out of your way or you're doing something specific, like going to the dump with a load of rubbish, and there's even the slightest doubt they might not be open, phone ahead. That's always my advice in France. Anyway, I hope this has been interesting, useful, informative, motivated you to go and start cleaning stuff out and taking it to the tip. And as always, if there's any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments or get in touch. Thank you very much for listening, and thank you very much to our sponsors, Fab French Insurance, who will make your life as simple as Frenchly possible. And on that note, if you have got a small trailer to go behind your car, don't forget that that needs to be insured too. So get in touch with your friendly local insurance brokers. Right, that's enough plugging of our sponsors. Have a great week, and I will be back shortly with a new episode. Thank you for listening. Bye bye.